Hey there, first movers. We are coming to you with a very, very special series today. We've been working with Dina Sportswear on a campaign called Suited for Legacy, where we're interviewing the OGs, the original Matildas, learning all about their stories and how they made visibility become possibility. Renaye, I'm so excited to be speaking to you, one of the OG Matildas. You must have some stories. But what I wanted to do and what we wanted to share, I guess, with the audience first was a bit about you as a kid. What kind of kid were you growing up?
Wow, it's a long time ago. A busy kid. I was active down at the lake, at the beach, jumping out of trees with my friends and brothers at the local creek. Very stubborn, strong-willed. I was always on the go. I don't recall ever stopping, and as it turns out, probably undiagnosed adult ADHD for sure, but had a real zest for life, adventure, and I just had to keep moving. Yeah, mum and dad absolutely had their hands full with me for sure, but encouraged it. We were different to how it is today. We were just out there setting ourselves up for active, healthy lifestyle, and anything was possible. Mum and dad always just encouraged me to do whatever. They weren't helicopter parents, hence that I just had no fear, probably. I do a bit now, but back then. So, yeah, just a very busy, active, happy kid in a beautiful family with wonderful parents and siblings. Very lucky.
That is awesome to hear. And how did football come into your life? Where did that come from?
Well, my brothers, actually, and we lived across the road from a sporting ground. There was tennis courts, netball and soccer. And the football grounds, they were further away from all the other two. But I was drawn, my brothers played. And I remember I was probably 5 and mum and dad encouraged me. People said, and coach, your girl can't come and have a kick. Girls don't play soccer. But I just went and kicked around with my brothers. I very stubborn, wasn't going to be told no. And I just went and had a kick with them on the sidelines. Actually, a few people said, actually, she can actually kick a ball and she can do quite well, but never allowed to play back then. There was no mixed team. I couldn't play. Girls definitely don't play with the boys. You're too young for a start. So then I stepped back and I ended up playing a bit of netball on the netball courts there and tennis. But I was always drawn to that field that was furthest away in that sport, that was furthest away from my reach and that I could see. I was so drawn to it and I just kept showing up, training and going to the men's matches across the road every Sunday and then kicking at half time with my brothers and their friends. And that's where it started for me, and that I knew then that I just wanted to play and I just didn't know how I was going to do that though. But mum and dad just said, just go keep kicking with the boys. Don't let anybody tell you, no, you can't do it. Any problems, come get us, we'll sort them. So I had wonderful support from my family and my mum and dad especially. So that's where it all kicked off at about 6 years old.
Wow. I love that, the support from your parents and, saying don't take no for an answer.
Absolutely.
How did your football career then become if there were no mixed teams and there wasn't really a pathway for girls? And I know you say you're stubborn, but how did that kind of evolve into something?
Yeah, I guess for me at that young age, I didn't know what the future looked like. I didn't know what was possible at that time. I was just told, no, I can't play soccer within a team environment. So then I just put my energies into other sport and encouraged by all of them, with my mum and dad again. They just said, go do something else that you want to compete in. I had this competitive nature, I guess, and not probably knowing about it. So then I went and just played netball as a youngster. I did athletics through school, which I was quite successful at. Tennis I really loved. There was a choice in the end because I became quite good at tennis. And when I was sort of 11 and 12, more so 12, at the back end, there was a women's football team for Budgie. And I went, right, okay, but I'm not quite 13 yet. And I continued to play tennis, but the very first training session that I saw the women, the lights go on, I grabbed my boots, and I always had soccer boots. I always bought boots every year and so I could keep kicking, or every couple of years to kick around with the brothers. As soon as those lights went on across the road and I looked across, my brothers were training and I could see this women's team, I went, that's it, I'm over. And I thought, I know I'm a kid, but I can do this. So I went over and I saw the coach and he basically told me to go away. You're too little. He said, go away, hang on a monkey bar and stand in some cow manure, because I needed to get taller. because I was probably the women were
What?
probably in their early 20s. So I was absolutely heartbroken. I said, just let me have it. He said, no, kid, no. Anyway, I kind of knew what I could bring to the team or training. I knew that I had enough skill to probably compete. Wasn't quite sure. Anyway, long story, went away, hung on monkey bars, didn't stand in the cow manure, went back,
Good.
watched the women play, went and had kicks at halftime when they played at home. Very first session the next year I went and I begged this coach and I said, just please, just let me have one session and you can say no or you can bring me on board. Had a kick, probably 10 minutes in. He said, where do you live, kid? I said, across the road. He said, who's at home with you? I said, Mum and Dad. He said, I'll come and have a chat. That was it. I
Wow.
was signed up within that next 24 hours and I was playing my very first game down at Edelong against the top team at 13 years old in our open age women's division. And that was the start of my football career.
Wow.
As I knew it then. So yeah, wonderful memories. And I just never gave up. From 6 years old, I just kept active, busy, and hoping one day things would change, and they did. And then
That's
that was the
amazing.
start. Yeah,
That's like the power of visibility. You
absolutely.
could see it. Once you could finally see it,
Yep.
it wasn't just the field of dreams. It was like the field of becoming.
Possibility.
You could do that. The field of possibility. That's right.
Absolutely. And when I played in my very first year, there was a women's Australian national soccer team. We weren't named the Matildas back then. And I thought that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to be good enough to become and play for Australia. Even people wonder if that's a thing, but it was. I remember it vividly. I knew that if that's what's there and that's the highest achievement, I'm going to do everything I can to get there. I don't know. I just had this belief in myself. And I guess that stems back to the way I was raised with Mum and Dad that never put limits or limited me to, oh, you're a girl, you really can't do that. You can absolutely do anything you want to put your mind to. And my mind was set and that was it. And I was grateful and lucky enough to achieve what I'd set out to do. So that's a very vivid memory. I knew what I wanted to do.
That's
That's
amazing.
so special.
Yeah.
When you think about that time when you were playing and what football looked like then for women versus what it looks like now, what kind of compromises were expected of you? What compromises did you make physically, emotionally, all of those things so you could actually stay in the game? Because it's definitely not as it is today.
Oh, absolutely. The compromises were so different there's no real compromise for a lot of our top tier women's teams and especially our national team. There's no compromise with what they have to do to play at their highest level. You know, women I know that I'm talking when I represented for Northern New South Wales for my state team, which had to play to be selected to play for your country. You know, we had to give up 3 weeks of that year to go to the national titles. We'd go into training camp for a week and then the nationals we'd travel to interstate. So if people had jobs, they would have to have taken that leave. I'm aware of women that lost their jobs to want to go and play even at that level, more so when they played for Australia. They had a choice. Yeah, represent your country, that's wonderful, but there may not be a job to come back to. Our training facilities were not great. We'd train on the backfield where the lights were terrible. The men were on the lit up fields. We could see where we were going because it was so well lit up. We sort of scrambled and guessed a lot of the time where the lines were, or so change rooms, we had to make way for the men. Sometimes we'd have to get change behind a marquee or a drop sheet outside the change rooms because the men had to come in to get ready and we couldn't go in and use those facilities. Lots of compromise again. There's probably a whole lot more that I've probably not remembered, but there was absolute compromise and sacrifice to play the game back in that day. I'm talking in the late 70s into probably the late 80s, early 90s. And I think, and probably it still happens a little bit, I guess, some women's and our young women's and girls teams probably have to make way for the boys or, our games, we couldn't play our games at 1 o'clock on a Sunday because the men had to play at 3 o'clock and we couldn't mess up the ground for the boys. So our games got scratched. We were irrelevant. That you guys don't matter. We need the field for the men. That was just not even we look back now and go, wow, that's just so wrong. But that was just what it was. And it was kind of accepted. I was never happy with that. I was always, that's not fair. How does that happen? Why are men more important than why are men more us women? We can play the game. We mightn't be as physical and as strong, but we give it absolutely everything. And our skills and techniques were probably just as good as the men, to be fair. Looking back, it was pretty unfair and we were discriminated against, but it wasn't known that that was discrimination because that's what we had to accept.
Yeah,
They were
it just shows you,
sacrifices.
doesn't it? It just shows you the normalization and how conditioned we are, or you might have been back in those days, to just a set of circumstances and, told not to question, told to be grateful for what you've got. You've got a team at least, let alone having to get changed behind a drop sheet. Like, even just hearing that enrages me, but, we won't continue on. But I can't believe that that's a scenario that you had to endure. From those sorts of moments, though, I bet there were some funny stories that came out of that. There's always that one teammate that does something silly. Is the person prepared to speak up, whatever that might be? Do you have a story from your era that still makes you laugh out loud today?
There's quite a few. There's a couple come to mind. 1983, tour to Xi'an City in China with the Matildas. We played in an international invitational. No World Cups or Olympics back then. They were precursors. There was conversations about eventually this will happen. There will be women in the Olympics. Women will go to a World Cup. And I kept hanging on, but that's another story. But we travelled to Xi'an City in China and we stayed at the university hotel behind a big lock gate. And women, all blonde Western women, were not that visible over there in 1983. Still very much a communist country, the green hats with the red star, mainly men came to our match. I shared a room with one of my oldest and dearest friends and Matilda teammate Lee Wardell. We were both strikers and we shared a room in this hotel. And probably the second night in, the first night we had no issues, second night in, by that stage, we were eating fruits with thick skin because food over there was very different to what we were used to. We never travelled with our own luxuries and comforts of foods like they kind of did not many more years after that. We were very cautious and mindful of what we ate. So we had a lot of fruit. So we had in our room, we had a bin which we put our fruit skins in, etc. And after a long day of training, team meetings, off to bed, lights out. It was probably, I don't know, 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning. I'm laying there. We've both got our own double bed side by side. And I woke up and I felt something jump up on the bed. And I thought, what the hell? What's that? And then I could feel this thing run up my top my sheet.
Oh my God.
And I felt this tail flick on me.
Oh, no.
And I called out to Lee and I said, Wardell, what, mate? What? I said, put the light on. I think there's mice or rats. Anyway, she's put the room, seriously, they scattered. We had a vent under our window that obviously had room for rats. And we were on a floor with the Italian women's national team. And I jumped up, flung a couple of rats off me, and we've run out to trying to get out of our room. We've opened up the door, run into the hallway. It was like the rats had a pact and said, let's go, because
my God.
that whole floor erupted and we were on with the Italians. And I'll never forget it. One of the Italian women.
Did they just go mad?
They ran up the hallway. One ran up, because we were out in the hallway. We were trying to escape. And this one player, I'll never forget it, she ran up the hallway, she goes, a Mickey Mouse. And I said, no Mickey Mouse there, love. They're dirty big rats. And it was just so funny. So it was funny, kind of funny to look back now, but at the time it was like, how do we do this every night? What do we do? So we stuffed our beautiful Chinese silk bed covers up under the vents and we put the bins out at night. So there was an ongoing between Lee and I, your turn to put the bins out. So we just... Yeah, but we solved the problem, but that was a funny story. The other one was in Taiwan, similar year. They had flagpoles. I did a Dawny Fraser, probably 4 stories up.
Yeah.
Break in the window, couple of teammates hanging onto my ankles. I don't know what the pole, it seemed pretty strong at the time, but I actually got the flag and I still have it to this day. Yep. And when we left the next morning, I looked up and there was probably 6 flags and there was 1 missing. And I'm like, yep, I've got you. That's it. And the other funny one, and it's an interesting one, it comes to do with our uniforms and what that looked like for us back then. We had Socceroo hand-me-downs and when we were in Taiwan, had a team unpacked come to the manager's room. We're going to have our team meeting. We all crammed into your normal hotel size room. We walked in and there's a pile of shirts, jerseys, there's a pile of shorts and there's a pile of socks. And it was like seagulls to chips. That's how we picked our strip for that tournament. We never got our numbers. We never had names on our back. And if you had a special number and you could get it and nobody else wanted it, but the problem was that it mightn't have been the size you needed. If you liked it loose and comfortable, it might have been too small. So that was, I look back now on how funny, how ridiculous that is when you think about it now, but it was quite funny. I remember that there was people scrambled for their numbers. I wasn't so superstitious. I was lucky enough to get my number. It was probably a little bit on the smaller side because I like things. We were used to wearing things that were bigger because nothing was ever designed for women back then, to be fair, and we got a lot of hand-me-downs. So that was kind of a funny, I call it the Taiwan gear grab, and that's a funny memory as well, just what we did back then to play the game and looking back and how funny that is now.
Yeah. I mean, that's a beautiful and perfect segue to talking about the blazer you're wearing now and the idea of, I guess, how far society's come, sports, and looking at what Dina's doing around creating this beautiful tailoring. But when you talk about that, and I can just picture you, like you said, it's like seagulls to chips, and it's like, go, get it.
So apt.
But when you have something that's ready made for you, that's fit for you, it signals like respect and belonging, and I matter, and I'm sure it helps you play better, and you just mentally show up like, I look good, I feel good. What do you think not having that taught women back then, and what is it teaching them now as we evolve to actually have something that fits?
I think it just shows how far we've come. Like you said, how much we've probably gained a lot more respect, and it shows in the time and the effort and the commitment by such wonderful brands as Dina. We feel seen, and they've come on board and they're saying, not out loud, that you guys matter and we care and we understand the legacy, the trailblazers and the pioneers and the job that you did and that you got on with it. And you probably didn't feel like really part of it because you weren't getting that special extra attention that the women of today in our team is getting in that way. So it just shows the wonderful commitment and the belief. And when someone else believes and is committed to you, you feel that back. You feel a sense of, wow, we didn't get it back then, but even all these years later, you women and you ladies that played back then absolutely matter, and we thank you and we respect you and we want to do something for you. And let me say that has not gone unnoticed and not been that well received and appreciated. And I know I wear this with absolute honour and gratitude of how we've been recognised. And it could only just be it's a small thing, but to us it's such a big thing. And it says we do matter, and we did matter. Back then we didn't know it, but we're letting you know now. So yeah.
I absolutely love that because it's so, we can be so focused on moving forward and progressing and momentum, but actually it's so important and it's a responsibility of ours to look back and look at who were those first movers, who were the people who were prepared to be the first to go first. I mean, for us at First Movers, that's our entire ethos, right? We define first movers as those people, whether they even know it at the time or not, but who actively shape the environment that they're in, and they know inherently in their heart of hearts, that for the world or for their sport to meet its true potential, that someone somewhere has to be the first to go first and pull on that jersey, whether it fits or not.
Yep.
Knowing that definition, Renaye, what does being a first mover mean to you now? Like looking back on your career, what do those words mean to you?
First mover means to me that I was a pioneer, I was a trailblazer, that I hopefully leave a wonderful legacy for the women and the young women coming through now. I've got two beautiful daughters, Marley and Sammy, and they can see me now, and I share my stories and my journeys and what I endured and what I had to give up and sacrifice. And thankfully they don't have to as much now with that legacy, that not just myself, but all the women that played back then. I guess it shows my resilience, my never say die, which is a catch cry for the Matildas. That was our catch cry back then. We didn't know it. So I think to be honoured and to be part of a first mover is just that says our story, because First Movers way back at the start, and moving forward, the legacy that we've kind of left as trailblazers, pioneers, and if we can share our stories and be and celebrate it and join this wonderful podcast and this wonderful group that are celebrating and sharing our story. It's just the history is something incredible and something I'm so proud of.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you talking about your daughters, I think so many of us, both Cass and I have daughters as well. And those are real drivers, motivators for the work that we do at First Movers too.
Yeah.
And I think, as we mentioned, looking back, we want to make sure that our girls see the hard work. They see what's been put in, not just, the big lights and the winnings of the games and all of the kind of sparkly, bright, shiny areas, the celebration. It's really important for them to see their place in sport and what it takes to be a champion and what it takes to be a first mover, just like you are. And one of the things that we talk a lot about is our first framework. So what does it actually take to be a first mover? What are the practical skills? What are the characteristics and the behaviors and attitudes that are common amongst first movers and people like you? So the first thing that we wanted to talk about is that F, and that stands for fueling growth. It's an acronym for the word first, and we'll go through that.
Yeah.
But in looking at that ability to fuel your own growth, what's a belief or a practice or a habit that fuels your growth today, post Matildas era?
Oh, can you just hold that for a second? Is that all right?
Sure.
I've just got to find, I did have some keywords for that, sorry.
Of course,
That
take your
was-
time.
What part was that? Which question? 5, 6? Ignite
It's
courage.
6.
6.
6 is
First
F
frame.
is
So
fuel. Yeah.
is that the first part? Resilience, yeah.
So
Can you
yeah,
just ask
that'll
that?
be the.
Yeah,
I'll ask the
Yeah.
question again.
yeah, if you don't mind, sorry.
Yeah, of
I've just-
course. Of
Yeah,
course.
that's great. Sorry.
Don't
No
apologize.
sorry.
There's no
That's
sorries.
why we have
We
editing.
can cut all this stuff
That's
out.
what we have editing.
It's
I've just got,
absolutely
if it was live, I'd be not in trouble. I would have, but I've made some key points, so that's great.
I
Yeah.
love
so
it.
if you
love
could just
it.
ask that one.
Absolutely fine.
Yep.
I'll re-ask the question now. So, Renaye, one of the things that we do at First Movers is we try to unpack the characteristics and the attitudes and the behaviours and skill sets of First Movers so that other people can learn how to be one too. And we have an acronym for the word FIRST that we kind of go through to try and help teach those moments. And the first part of the acronym is the F, which stands for fueling growth. Now, when you reflect on your life now, do you have a belief or a practice or a habit that fuels your growth today?
Yeah. Couple of the words come to mind straight up is resilient. Resilience is such a key word for me because I had to be resilient back then, and I'm still having to be, to a point, resilient now. To have a voice, I do have a voice in many aspects, as with Matilda alumni, as the connection we have there, as in speaking up for things that aren't okay. There's a backstory to that in my coaching career. I'd never be afraid to speak and have a voice and say, that's not okay, or what can we do better? And that, I think, has carried me right through from day dot, from my mum and dad saying, don't let anybody say, no, you can't do that, because you can, and we're here to support you, and never not have a voice. Unfortunately, it's going to be tough because you are a young female and it's a boy's man's world, but never give up. Be courageous. Don't be afraid. And if you see or hear something that's not okay, do or say something about it. And that's carried me through from when I was a youngster. And that was really instilled and supported and encouraged again by my wonderful mum and dad. So, yeah.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. And I think resilience, you would know too, over time, it's a muscle, right? We have to build it and build it. We're not born with it, but we can learn how to grow that muscle along with, courage and all of these things, which leads us into the I of the first framework, which is all about igniting courage and bringing that resilience muscle, I guess, into flex. So tell us a little bit about a moment where you had to choose courage over comfort, and what did that teach you?
Yeah, resilience again at the end of the story. I think I had to sit with this question for a little bit because I struggled, but then I had a quick conversation and it just came, a couple of things came to me straight away. My very first game for the Matildas. Am I good enough? Do I deserve to be here? It was hard to get here. There's so many good players. That doubt, which was something that I'd never put myself in before, because I always knew this is what I'm going to do, this is who I am, and I'm going to do it because I know I can. And mum and dad told me I could. So that was probably a courageous moment as a first time pull on that jersey, listen to the anthem. Very, very proud moment. I guess another one, I ensconced myself into the national team, probably had quite a few more years ahead, suffered a pretty nasty ankle injury, which in the end ended my Matildas career. But the courage over comfort in that aspect was I could have taken the comfortable way and not pushed and tested an ankle injury at a game where I had to make a decision to whether I was well enough or fit enough or strong enough to go to China for the first unofficial Women's World Cup. All expenses, the first time that would have ever happened for me. Do I just say, yeah, I'm okay and be comfortable with that and get over there and maybe not be? Or do I take that field, strap my ankle up within an inch of its life and play that game and be courageous and do that? And I was courageous, but it absolutely ended my career. I look back, it was probably the hardest moment of my football career, but it's one of the hardest moments. But it was what it was back then, and we didn't have the support like they do now. I didn't have rehab. There was no pathway to let's get this striker back playing for her country. So that was really tough. So that was my courage over comfort moment. I guess wind back 2 years when I lost my mum in 1986. The courage to continue was tough because she was my person. She was my biggest fan, my biggest supporter, my biggest inspiration, a strong, stubborn, resilient, courageous woman who travelled with our state teams as our nurse. She was a trained nurse.
Wow.
She got to see me play for my country in 1986 in March in the Oceania Cup in New Zealand, which I was... That's a memory I'll carry with me always, that she actually made it to see me play for Australia because we never played in Australia back then. So, there was a few key moments, but the loss of my mum I questioned whether I wanted to continue to play and what that would like with her not on on the sideline and her not there to patch me up when I took a whole lot of skin off my knee. But I knew that what would mum do? She would just keep going. You live, you're born and you die, she used to say to me. And sweetie, life ain't no dress rehearsal. You get one shot. And that carried me on. Yeah.
She sounds amazing.
She sure does.
Absolutely.
She sounds absolutely incredible. Your comment, the courage to continue, boy, does that resonate. I think for everybody listening here, the loss of a parent. And I think, it sounds like from what you've said, your parents were your cheerleaders, they were your community, they were the people who taught you to be that first mover, to run out there and give it a go and built that self-belief. So I can absolutely imagine putting myself in your position in that moment, the courage to continue, my friend. That is igniting courage, part of that framework. That is it to an absolute T.
If I could take my hat off with these things, I'd take my hat off to you.
100%. 100%. The courage to continue. There's nothing like that. And I imagine as well, being the nurse for the team, everybody would have been feeling that absolute loss, that stalwart, that person that was in many ways their support as well. So what an incredible story there.
Thank you.
The next question, I guess, is around R, which is reframing relationships. And I'm sure you had to do that, of course, after that moment. But when you think about relationships in your life, with yourself, your body, we've certainly heard stories about the conflicting narratives that many players experienced and commentary around bodies, teammates, community, the game. What relationship stands out as one that you had to reframe after you retired, and what gift has that given you?
I think for me was what now after football, playing at a high level and connecting and playing the sport that I, from a 6-year-old, carried me right through to probably mid-30s when I played community football, etc., and retiring out of and not being able to play for the national team. For me, the missing of the camaraderie and the travel and the mateship and the friendship was something that I always have carried and maintained, and my friendships and connections from my transition out of football into football world still. I went on to do some coaching. I travelled with the young Matildas. I've been part of the Matildas alumni, unofficial CEO, if you like. For me, the transition with my body wasn't a huge transition as in how I looked or felt back then, because it wasn't such as a bigger deal. We never had, we never had to watch what we ate. We never had, weight checks and unfortunately some young women through the generations have had to put up with fat shaming and some of the horrible things that were expected. I never had to make transitions from that. The transitions from football into not football was the friendships and the connections that I still hold dear. And out of my whole football journey, I've said this time and time again, they are the most important and wonderful things to come out of football, to be fair. I've got lifelong friends of 40, 45 years that I still stay in touch with, and we travel to watch the Tillies today, and we get together for watch parties, and we have weekends and gatherings and just come up to McGov's for a pool party and a catch up. Very lucky. My transition was probably pretty good, because today the transition I think would be a whole lot harder for a lot of these women that have travelled the world and that's been their full-time job. I still had a life outside of football that I could still maintain a lot of my own independence and not lose myself in just football. Yeah, so I was very, very lucky in that regard. But friendships, mateship, connection is some of the most important, wonderful things in the transition out of actually being a player and staying connected, because it was one big community. Yeah. And it's
I think
wonderful.
that's the big thing, is what you just talked about there was that idea of connection, because it transcends identity. And when identity shifts, whether you stay in football or not, those connections stay. My fiance and I talk about this all the time when when was the happiest point of your life? And we both always answer when we were part of a team, when we were playing sport, before adulthood, really. And into adulthood, but it's those teammates, those inside jokes, those moments like the rat story. Oh my god!
Oh my god! As unforgettable.
You lived through that together. You're friends for life.
We are friends for life. She's a first 11 Hall of Famer and just a wonderful person who still gives back to football. Yeah.
Yeah, and
amazing.
I'm sure you can't hear Mickey Mouse without hearing it in an Italian accent.
Never. It was there. I just didn't get it across. But yeah, Mickey Mouse and Mickey Mouse. I'll never forget it. I'll never forget it. Yeah.
I love that so much.
We stayed in the same hotel as the teams we played against. So you kind of had breakfast or past, it was weird. You wouldn't ever do that now as a national team. You steer clear. But yeah, so there's connection. It was connection back in the day, because we didn't play for money. We didn't have that, luxury. We didn't travel first class. So to our badges on our blazers, we paid at the airport before we boarded a plane. Our story is vast but wonderful. And, you hear some people go, oh, look what they're getting now. That's not fair. But it's generational, guys.
Yep.
We started. We paid. We didn't get paid. We sacrificed. We lost jobs. Women went off to have babies and their careers finished. I would go back. If someone said to me back then, where would you like to see women's football in 30 years' time, 20, 30 years? I would have said, how good would it be not to have to pay to play for your country? Never imagined how far it's come and how wonderful it is and what the women get now. And we are part of that legacy and that journey. And I'm so proud of it. And if I had to go back and know exactly what was going to come, I would put my hand up in a heartbeat and go, yep, I'm going to kickstart this journey. Let's go, girls. Not go, that's not fair. They're going to get all of that. Why? But it's generational. And
I love
we're one of
that
the first
mindset.
generations of women's football in our country.
And
that's something
I
to be
think
pretty proud of.
super proud of. And it's an ethos that can be taken outside of sport. It can be taken in culture and community, in the workplace, all of that. It's not, why do they get that or will they get that? It's like, we get to be the better ancestors. We get to be the ones that lift, that build these things. That's the ethos for me. And you can tell I get really passionate in my heart.
Absolutely,
about this.
Yeah.
Because
we
it's
created that. Yeah.
We get to build it. And yes, we will have to sacrifice in so many different parts of our lives. But yes, our daughters, our granddaughters will have better outcomes, and they'll do the same if they see us doing that. I just love it.
Absolutely. Yeah. And we get to go and watch the Matildas, and we stand for the national anthem, and we're a lot of the former players, and you get goosebumps, you feel proud, and even unconsciously, not always, it's in the back of your mind, hey, I pulled on that jersey. I'm one of probably 240 women. That's not a lot of women over 50 years that have pulled on that jersey. And I worked bloody hard to get there, and it was hard to stay there. And I still feel there because of our connections and our team, our friends that we've carried with us. We still feel part of our team for that team. It's connected. And that will never change. That will never, ever change.
Well, that's
and
the legacy,
wonderful
isn't
to
it?
carry that with us as well.
Well, that leads perfectly into I was going to ask you a question about the S and shaping the status quo, but it sounds like everything you've just said is wrapped in and around that shaping and shaking up a status quo. But what's, from your perspective, what's one assumption or thing that people think about women's sport that it's an assumption that can still be shaken up or shaped a little bit? What would you love to be shaken up for good?
Yeah, I think women still get seen as probably not in just the sporting world, but even in real world, second to men. Men got better wages, men get this, men get that. I think that was so evident back in it. It was, again, it wasn't even highlighted back then. We look back now and think how absolutely discriminative that was and how not okay that was, but we didn't know it back then. But now we see and we see what we actually had to do and what we had to put up with. And that's really, I look back now and think, wow, that shouldn't happen today. And I know it still does to a degree. That assumption of we're second to men and men are better, it's so outdated. That's way back in the day. Let's catch up, people, Now to be told a boy, oh, you kick like a girl, how good's that? How good is it for a young man to be, oh, come on, mate, you're kicking like a girl? That young
Lucky
fella should
him.
put his hand up and say, absolutely, because you know what? Post-World Cup, you got 15, 16-year-old young men, fellas, wanting to be Sam Kerr, wanting to be Macca. It's like, wow, it's how good, The Socceroos were seen and talked about as the boy Matildas.
The Matildas.
I love that so much.
The Matildas.
I keep hearing that amongst our kids, our kids' friendship groups. It's the boys going, what are the boy Matildas called? Renaye, so much of your story is so inspirational and hilarious and so full of life lessons. I think, this campaign's called Suited for Legacy, and a lot of it's obviously around what the modern day Matildas have benefited from because of you. But when I think of your story, I actually feel like your legacy is the friendships, is the community, is the connection, is what your life is now because of that beautiful experience as a footballer. If you were to sort of reflect on your life and your legacy, if it was a headline today, right now, what would it read?
Dear, that's a tough one. Trailblazer, pioneer, lover of football, friend, the connections we made. I had a voice. I still have a voice. I'm raising my 2 daughters to have a voice. Be strong, be heard, be kind. But I guess it's a tough question. Like a headline, I'm not sure what a headline for me would look like. It's not something that I ever thought about too much, to be honest. I guess just to be remembered as a player that enjoyed the game, gave it everything I had, left nothing to chance, just gave it my all each and every time, showed up for my friends, supported my friends. Yeah, grateful. Another thing too is I would like a legacy of there's so many wonderful people that supported our game back then, the mums and the dads and the volunteers that don't often get mentioned. Especially on my grassroots journey, the commitments and the sacrifice, the legacy that they leave behind, to share their story and to remember them and not to forget them, because without them, we wouldn't have happened either. They were actually the start. They did the hard yards. We come in and played football and had the best time ever. So, yeah, just to be really not even, I guess, just happy that I was able to play the game at a high level. And again, just the friendships and the connections to this day, just the most wonderful things. But yeah, that'd be probably it, I'd say, in a jumbled roundabout way. Yeah.
To me, it sounds like it's all about the feeling.
Yeah. And she could score goals. She did okay. She looked like she scored goals for fun back in the day.
Yeah, girl. Yeah, girl.
Yeah.
And could spin a good yarn. You are a great storyteller.
Thank you.
I love that. Thank you so much, Renaye, for all of your stories and your openness and for just being who you are in the world. And if that's stubborn, if that's in showing up, we need more women like you in the world. So thanks for spending this time with us.
Thanks so much, guys, and appreciate your time. And thanks for, just wanting to share our story. It's a wonderful platform that you've provided for us, because we never got this opportunity back in our day. We weren't interviewed or talked about or tell us a bit about your football or, the old saying, better late than never.
I love it.
It's not even late. It's just now's the time. And it has been for a little while, but it's becoming more and more. So really appreciate the time you guys give and the interest you've shown and your genuine passion for wanting to share our story. It's such a wonderful thing that you've done for us and allowing us to have a voice that we never ever had back in the day. So thank you.
It's our
Thank you.
absolute pleasure.
If you have enjoyed this episode as part of the Suited for Legacy campaign, what do folks need to do, Yaz?
Oh, they need to just hit that beautiful little bell, that subscribe button, because if you liked this sort of content, and I have to tell you, there is more of this to come, you want to make sure that it is delivered directly to you. We don't ask much, but if you like these episodes, if you're a person that wants to be a first mover, if you believe in visibility becoming possibility for people like you, your friends, your family and community, hit that subscribe button. You won't regret it.
Ring our bell.
Ring
Ring
that
our
bell.
bell.